The book is finally done.
Thank you.
Karin Nemri has been as sensitive to the inner light of others since she was a young girl visiting isolated seniors in a nursing home that was located in her neighborhood. Her gift of being able to connect to the spirit of others became even more pronounced after her near-death experience as a teen, which led her on a lifetime healing path to help not only other people, but herself too. Karin is a certified spiritual counselor, Ajay healer, and lecturer, as well as a certified domestic violence counselor with an associate degree in human services. She's volunteered hundreds of hours of her time with hospice and various nursing home in 1996. From 2000 to 2004, she was the chairperson of the Connecticut affiliate of the Twilight Brigade Compassion in Action, where she organized and co-facilitated training for hospice volunteers. Karin also served on the steering committee of the Hospice Veterans Partnership of Connecticut and was active in the Connecticut Coalition to improve end-of-life care. After the tragedy of 9/11, she was trained for the Connecticut Emergency Crisis Response Team Spiritual Division. Karin was also a member of the Connecticut Holistic Health Organization and served as the, I don't know if I know how to pronounce that word, ombudsman for a local nursing home. She's been a board member of the Academy for Spiritual and Consciousness Studies, Inc. since 2006. Karin is also an accomplished portrait artist. Yes, she is. Her artwork is beautiful. Her work is known for its vibrant colors and her ability to capture the soul of the subjects. She lives in Bloomfield, Connecticut, and is the proud mother of 3 grown children and the grandmother of 4 grandchildren. Dancing in the Moonlight, Embracing the Sacred in the Dying Time is her first book, and you can contact her at karinnemri@gmail.com. Thank you for presenting for us this evening, Karin.
Thank you, Tina. So, okay, let me just get myself situated here. Okay, so the year was 1971. I was 15 years old, and I had a lot of issues. I had family issues, I had self-esteem issues, and I had body image issues. And I also thought that if I would just lose some weight, all my problems would disappear. And unfortunately, the method that I chose was anorexia and bulimia. So yeah, I did lose a lot of weight, but I also lost my life. On the day that that happened, as I started to black out, my body felt like it was just melting into a heap of darkness on the ground. But that's not actually what happened, because soon I found myself floating above a lifeless 85-pound body. I was really confused. I had no idea really what was going on. I was still able to think, which I thought was part of the physical brain, which it is, but it's also part of the consciousness, which I had absolutely no understanding of, nor of the spirit or what religious books refer to as the soul. I actually thought that was a myth. So I didn't even know that the girl that I was looking down on was actually me, because she looked so sickly and emaciated. And I thought I was fat, pimply-faced, and ugly. So what happened after that really changed everything that I thought I knew about life. So this is going to be the summarized version of my near-death experience due to time constraints. So before I knew it, I came into the most brilliant and illuminating brightness. And it was filled with all this motion and movement, and it began pulsating in the most beautiful synchronized dance around me. And I felt like I would just be swept right up into it. Soon I was like melding with the movement, and I actually did become a part of it. I had become one with this light, which was so amazing because I spent my whole life as feeling like an outsider. And to be a part of something, especially something so much bigger than me, it was just so safe. It felt so safe and inviting. At that point, I began to sense other beings around me, and we entered into a telepathic communication. They were asking me a lot of questions about my life, and specifically about the things that I hadn't done that I always wanted to do. And the only thing I could think of was that I wanted to have kids. But as soon as I said that, I was starting to understand what was happening. I knew that something was happening. I just wasn't quite sure what. But I started to realize that I wouldn't be able to see any of those kids. And at the same time, I was beginning to sense that that physical body wasn't even anywhere near me anymore. And I couldn't see it or anything. So I really realized that that actually was my body. So it was really sinking in, and I started to really have a better understanding of the extent of the situation that I was in. And suddenly, the movement and the motion that I was all caught up in began to dissipate somewhat, and the bright light softened. And I was still thinking about those kids. And then this unbelievable, heavy feeling of sadness just went right through my being. And I began to feel alone and cheated. And I was saying, how could this happen? How could it happen to me? I mean, all I wanted to do was lose weight, and I've lost everything. And the pain was just too much, really, for me to bear. And then all of a sudden, I felt this sensation of loving arms just wrapping around me and cradling me. And then I was overcome by this sense of unconditional love and joy and happiness and understanding and compassion. And then to top that all off, I suddenly started to feel like I was important. And considering that I had lived my life being tortured by low self-esteem, feeling valuable and important was something really new to me. And I thought, wow, this is something I could really get used to. And I think I'd like to stay here. So I just basked in this awesome, divine God light, this brilliance. And while all that was going on, the beings were chatting amongst themselves, and I sensed that they were talking about me. And then I also sensed that they were about to come to a decision about something. And before I had a chance to even ponder what that might be, there was this jolt, and I was back in my body. And as I opened my eyes, I realized that there's a lot more to physical life, or to life, than just the physical parts. And I also understood that there's a part of us that survives physical death. And then I realized that I somehow absorbed information about energy fields and the energy system that we're all a part of, and other planes of reality that I never knew even existed before. I ended up like suddenly attuned to the energy system. And as my life went on, I was using that energy for healing. And I had no idea that until like 25 years later that there were actually energy healing methods that were a thing. I didn't even know it existed, and I had been doing it. So I became interested in everything spiritual, and wanted to also learn more about the transition. I knew what I went through. So as I got involved with hospice, I gained a lot more understanding from that perspective. And during the whole time after my near-death experience, it actually remained in a real prominent spot in my mind. And it caused me to reflect on just about every challenge that I had faced in my life on every single day, just to try to find the silver lining that lies beneath the challenge. So basically, that's the short version of my near-death experience. So if you have any questions, chat me up, and then we'll go on and I'll talk about other things.
I have some questions. Do I have to? Can you hear me, Karin?
You're breaking up.
Karin, I wanted to ask the beings that you encountered.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up.
Did they look? They look. Say that again? Oh,
Can you
Yeah, I
write
didn't
down the
even
question?
hear the question.
Sometimes if your internet connection is a little uncertain, if you turn off your video, you'll get a better audio connection. So Jack, you may want to turn your video camera off,
I turned.
and we might be able to hear you better.
Okay. So okay. What? Okay, you can type your question. All right. What did the beings look like that you encountered?
I didn't actually see them, I sensed them. So they were just so consuming. I felt like they appeared as light, but I didn't actually see more light. I just sensed that I did. But as far as communication goes, I was hearing them just as a voice, even though it was telepathic. It was really strange, so hard to describe.
Okay.
So somebody asked if they were orbs of light.
That's me.
Oh, that was you. Oh, okay. Well, that just came in. No, I just sensed that they were there. I could feel them around me.
Okay. All right. Describe the space that you were in.
Well, at first, when I was looking down and I could still see myself that I didn't know was me, it was kind of like being on a roof or something and looking down. But then it changed. Everything else pretty much disappeared, but there was a lot of movement. And again, it was more what I was sensing, and it wasn't what I was physically seeing.
Lisa Birch had another question. Lisa, something, how did it affect your anorexic after you came back from that?
Oh, good question. I still struggled a lot because I had a lot of problems, and I didn't have a heck of a lot of self-respect either. So I created more and more problems for myself. And as I did that, the anorexia and bulimia stayed actually until I got pregnant with my oldest son, my first boy. And it almost immediately just went away. But that was years. That was like 9 years later. So I struggled with that bulimia and anorexia for 9 years after that. To me, it was like an addiction.
So.
All right.
Bethany had a question, but it slipped away before I could read it.
Oh.
Bethany, could you show that again?
Oh, I'll just ask it. I wanted to know from Karin how much time seemed to pass while she was out of her body.
Well, I have no idea how much time it was. I think it was just a few minutes, but it seemed like it was about 2 hours.
Oh, thank you. Now, there was another question here about when you were growing up, did you grow up in a dysfunctional family or an environment that was challenging?
Yes, I did. And I go into all of that in my book.
Okay.
With others, have been okay. Hold on just a second.
Oh.
Yeah. The healing abilities, right?
Yeah, well, that's why we have those problems, just so that we can overcome them and grow spiritually.
So Jack's question was about, it wasn't really a question. Let's see, others who have had family issues have been super sensitive and developed abilities. That was what Karin was responding to. Karin, I wonder if you can tell us about working with people in a hospice environment and how your gifts have affected that?
Well, I think I learned how to make really good connections with the people as they were dying or as they were going through the whole process. According to hospice rules, I couldn't talk about my near-death experience unless the patient brought it up, because we're not there to talk about us. We're there they're the main focus. So it's not something that I even talked about a lot with people. I don't know if I answered your question.
Oh, yes, you did.
Oh, okay.
I wonder, you talked about, maybe it was Tina that in your intro talked about an ability to heal.
Yes, the Ajay healing.
Yes, and so.
Yeah, all energy healing works the same way. It's our healing guides who actually orchestrate the whole thing and bring the divine healing energy to the client, and we're just the conduit. And there's all different methods. And one of the things that I guess is a little different about the way that I work is that I understood that it was the guides who worked with the practitioners. And when I realized that there were energy healing methods that you can actually get a certification for, I got my Reiki certification. And all the studies that were done prove that it works, but it doesn't show how it works. And I knew that the guides were blending the divine energy with the negative energies in the person's energy field, and then they use us as the conduit to get it into the physical person. And I was asking God, isn't there some way we could show people, exactly how this is done? Because the amazing thing about energy healing is that it's invisible. So after years and years of asking this question, one day I was working with a man in one of the nursing homes, and I would do Reiki treatments with him like 3 times a week. And he expected me to do the same thing every single time. And, as far as where I put my hands and just exactly how I operated. And then all of a sudden, while I was working, my hands started to mix and blend and manipulate energy. You could see my hands moving and doing all of this stuff. And I was shocked. I wasn't sure what was going on. And the man was saying, hey, what's going on here? And I said, I'm not doing that. And it was my guides who actually blended their energy fields with mine so that they could move my hands in a way that the client or this man was able to see how these energies are being manipulated. So they told me that's what they call Ajay healing, because they call my guides call the energy system the Ajay energy system. I don't know what that word means. It's certainly not a language from the physical world, but that's how they described it to me. And about 20 years ago, I was at in Central Park on the Earth Day celebration, where there was all kinds of healers from all over the place, and musicians and everything. And I was doing healing treatments, and there were people who were watching, and there were 3 women who came to me afterward, and they said, "You're the only person we ever saw work like that, other than 2 ladies that they knew." And it turned out that their story was a lot like mine, and their guides were working with them in the same way that my guides were working with me. And they were the only people that I ever met who actually worked in that way. They didn't call the system Ajai healing. They had another name for it, but they worked the same way. And it gave the clients an opportunity to see what is normally invisible. And it's not stronger or better than any other system. It's just different, that's all.
Thank you. That's incredible.
Even after all these years, Karin, I'm still amazed on how your arms don't get tired. That you explained that something about, what is it, that your soul leaves the body or something like that? How does that?
Yeah, well, I am in an altered state, and I'm in a state, I think, of like the dream sleep, or when it happens. So I actually feel energized afterwards because all this great energy is going through me.
Yeah.
But it's funny because I wear a Fitbit now, and after a healing, there's like something like 25,000 steps on it, you know, after 20 minutes, you know. So I know that there's a lot of movement going on.
Yeah. Very good.
Which you would think would make me tired.
Yeah.
I have a question. Hi.
Hi.
I have a question. I don't know how to raise my hand, though. I don't mean to bust in.
Oh, that's okay.
Well, I want to know, do you find your gifts changing? Do you find them being added to, or something happening now that didn't happen years ago?
Years ago, I feel that a lot of what I was doing, there was more. I could hear my guides better. We had conversations that sounded just like I was talking to somebody on a telephone. And then at a certain point, you know, they were saying, you need to live in the physical world. And I was enjoying all of my friends in the spiritual realm, and they were teaching me so much. And they helped me to resolve all the issues that I had faced in my life. And at a certain point, they said that, we know you're not going to like this, but you're not going to hear us the way you used to hear us, the way you're used to hearing us. So it's very different now. I can't say it's better or worse. It's just very different. And that is constantly changing. And as different guides come through, working with their energy, with my energy, a lot of them are experimenting too, to find the best way to work through me.
Is there ever a time where you want to work and your guides are out at lunch, or?
Well, I used to worry about that.
Yeah.
But no, they're always there. They always told me, you know, if there's healing to be done, they're there.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Karin, this is Bethany.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I just wondered, I put my question in the chat. Do you think that this type of energy healing is something that anyone can do? And can people learn how to do it?
People can't learn how to do it. Energy healing, whatever method the practitioner wants to use, it has to resonate with them. And the guides will, the guides who resonate with that particular practitioner will find the best way to utilize the energy in the most efficient way.
Thank you.
That is not to say that energy healing can't be learned. That could be learned, but the methods has to resonate with the practitioner. I hope I explained that correctly.
Okay. Do you want to talk about your book and the transition during your father's passing?
Yeah, I have a few things that I would like to set it up, and then I have some things that excerpts that I would like to read from it that we can discuss after.
Very good.
Okay, so well, thank you for your questions so far. So, meanwhile, back on Earth, I realized that one of the things that everyone on this planet has in common is that at some point or another, we'll all be dealing with facing death, whether it's of a family member, a friend, a neighbor, co-worker, or even our own deaths. But the other thing that I learned, interestingly, having said that, is that according to research, the number one fear feared by most people just happens to be the fear of dying. So, of course, we all have our own cultures and our beliefs that shape that fear. But the bottom line is, no matter how hard we try, no matter what we do, we can't avoid death. Even though I think we all know that death is encompassed in life itself, and life is encompassed in death. So, like right now, at this time, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me here tonight so that we can all talk about death together, because most people don't even want to think about the dreaded D word, let alone talk about it. So I'm glad you're all here. And as we talk about this subject, I want to add that for those of you who might be going through the dying process with a loved one right now, or if you're grieving from a loss, I want you to know that you have my heartfelt understanding and empathy. Now, there's a lot that goes on during the dying time, and it's not only about death. It's actually the study of life with death in it. And for anybody going through it, going through the process, you quickly realize that the process itself is a lot like an onion. And I know a lot of people use that analogy, but it's one that works. So I'm going to use it too. There's so many things that you go through that have to be peeled down and worked through. Like there's a whole cycle of emotions and feelings that you'll be going through. And it's not just one cycle of emotions. It's the cycle repeating itself over and over and over again. And I'm talking about every single feeling and every emotion that exists you will most likely be going through if you're going through the dying process with yourself or with somebody else. And then there's faith. There's finding faith, losing faith, defining faith, redefining faith, reevaluating your faith. And then there's losses that you'll experience, not only big losses, but little small losses and medium losses too. And one of the most important ones, I think, that people deal with, that they go through, is the loss of what they thought was their identity. Now, we all have identity crises throughout our life, but this is the last one in this physical life. So people are under pressure to like work through it. And for the most part, I think that people do. And I mean, we all have our own struggles and our traumas and our experiences that we go through. And I think that the most important goal in life, or one of the most important goals, is to find meaning behind all of our suffering. And my book, Dancing in the Moonlight, Embracing the Sacred in the Dying Time, I think it demonstrates just that, how one family, my family, how we did it, how we got through the whole ordeal and were able to come out better in the end, really. As I share my experiences, I really hope that it can offer you some comfort and also some guidance in your own journeys. So it's just amazing to me, the gifts that we can find in the end stages of life. So right now, I'd like to read a little bit. I have I chose 3 excerpts that I thought might be helpful. Now, the first one is written actually by my son, my youngest. He was 17 at the time of his experience with his grandfather when he was dying. And by some, I'll say, coincidence, at that time, he was already trained as a certified nurse's assistant. And my father, in this period, was still in the middle of his chemo treatments. And he needed full-time care by then. And so did my mother. So my brother and sister and I were taking turns spending nights and days there, but every once in a while my daughter or my son would take over. So what he wrote here was seeing his grandfather for the first time since he had been sick. So he writes, or actually, he didn't write this yet. Okay. When the weekend arrived for his first time on duty, I had a feeling that it might bring some memorable and perhaps defining moments in my son's life. My hunch proved to be correct. His father dropped him off at my parents' house just in time for him to assist his grandfather in the shower. I guessed that he hadn't shown up entirely prepared emotionally for what would transpire in the bathroom that day. It was years later when he finally was able to express and share his thoughts and feelings surrounding the experience. In Hessen's own words, he recalled the day as vividly as if it had just happened. So he writes, I always saw Grandpa as a role model, and he was a man who was exactly that. A good man, successful, motivated, loving, strong, and approachable. This is how my grandfather presented himself to me. This is what I saw, and this is who he was. But then the unbelievable happened. The power of reality showed its formidable face right before my eyes, and it was totally shocking. The man was literally deteriorating in front of me. And just as I saw it, he saw it also. The stark reality hitting him for the very first time. I stood staring at him as he stared at himself in the mirror, and there was a moment of disbelief on both our parts. We were feeling the same thing at the same time, except that he was my elder, a leader, a real man in the presence of a young man, a boy, lost and confused in life, and even more so at that moment. He seemed to sense how our thoughts melded together as we both stared at the man in the mirror. My grandpa is just skin and bones, I thought to myself, still in disbelief. Look what this cancer did to me. Do you see this? He said, motioning to his rib cage with the hanging, wrinkled skin draping over his old bones. As we continued staring at the mirror, his body seemed to be disintegrating right before our eyes. How the hell is this possible? How can this happen to exactly the kind of man that I'm supposed to become? Then he dropped the towel from his waist as he prepared to step into the shower, and I was glad I was there to assist. There was so much confusion racing through my head. But suddenly, I realized that he was still the man that he always was when I caught a glimpse of the confidence that seemed to be emanating from him. I saw a man who dealt with the cards that he got dealt. He slowly stepped into the shower, and as the water hit his body, he became relaxed. His eyes closed. I held my hand behind his back for support. With his lid still shut tight, he explained, you know, sometimes in life things don't turn out the way you expect, and you just have to deal with it. You do what you have to do. He paused as the water splashed over his face. Then, opening his eyes, he said just 2 words, finish school. He was still the same man I admired and loved, despite his unrecognizable, skinny, and sickly shell of a body. He was a grandfather with his grandson, who I don't think ever thought he would need assistance taking a shower. This is probably one of the most dreaded times when you're going to visit somebody that you hadn't seen in a while, somebody who was terminally ill, and somebody that you love. So it's shocking. It's really shocking. And when you get beyond the physical, what you're seeing physically, and you can see the spiritual part of that person, that's how you get through it. If anybody has any comments or questions, chat me up. Chat me up, not chop me up.
Karin, my name is Laura, and I've been doing hospice volunteering for about 15 years. And before I got into doing that, I spent the last 2 weeks of my mother's life with her while she went through her transition. And what was really interesting to me was that she had these dreams, and every time she'd wake up, she'd tell me about one of her dreams. She saw her funeral. She described it to a T. She talked about 4 red velvet chairs that were right in front of her casket. And when the funeral did happen, guess what? There were 4 red velvet chairs.
Wow.
But my point was that all these dreams that she had, she dreamt about 3 angels coming to visit her and getting her dressed and combing her hair, and then they left. And she was crying when she woke up because she wanted to go with them. And then another time she dreamt about meeting JFK, whom she loved and respected. And after she passed, I asked a medium friend of mine about those dreams, and she said, well, I think that her angels and guides were introducing her to the other side slowly. So then when it actually happened, she wouldn't be afraid.
Yeah.
I think that was very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. In my book, I describe a similar thing. And I think that even more so, it helps the person to get to the point of acceptance about
Right.
what's going to happen.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing.
And another thing I wanted to tell you about was when I did training to do hospice volunteering, I'll never forget one of the exercises that we did so that we would have more empathy for our clients was we took 4 pieces of paper and we wrote down the 4 things that were most important in our life. And then one by one, we had to throw them away.
Yeah, that's when I was doing hospice trainings. That is one of the exercises, and it really is powerful.
It's very powerful.
Very powerful. And I know when I went through that exercise the first time I did it, I was surprised at what I threw away and when.
Yeah,
You know,
it was
yeah, you think we're going to do it a different way, and yeah, that is.
Karin, you mentioned that your father had visitations.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I'll be going through one next.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that what you wanted? Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So this one, it's a little bit lengthy, but okay. It wasn't long before the second visitation took place, or the second vision. My father had become a lot less anxious, especially during the daytime hours, and then spending more time sitting in his wheelchair, which allowed him the ability to either relax or to move about as he wished without much help from others. That is, after he was initially seated into the chair. It was not that he wheeled himself around a lot, but his red cartoon slippers were given an opportunity to work less tirelessly than they did when he stood up and walked using the walker. The wheelchair made it much easier for him to move about while those silly slippers pedaled the floor and became an engine, transforming it into a Flintstone-like vehicle of transportation. This gave my father at least a smidgen of control over his mobility when losing control was one of his biggest challenges. Mostly he sat quietly and contentedly, staring into space once he parked himself in the corner of the living room near the open door. The full glass storm door appeared to protect his daydreams from the outside weather conditions, which in that particular year was mostly rain. I don't know whether his intention was to look out at the neighborhood that he had lived in for 54 years, or to uncover a brand new world through that glass, perhaps even another plane of reality that may have been attempting to come into view. On this particular day, after sitting for almost 2 hours, it seemed like a kind of fusion was taking place between my father's divine mind and his human mind. And I say this because seemingly out of nowhere, in a clear, strong voice, Dad blurted out, "Do you know Eddie?" "Eddie who?" I asked. "Eddie Bauer," Dad responded matter-of-factly, as if I had been privy to his thoughts. Well, that's a strange question, I thought, wondering where it had come from. I had never seen my father wearing the Eddie Bauer label or seeing anything in the house of that brand for that matter. I guess I was taking too long trying to figure out why he asked that odd question in what had seemed to me to be at an even odder moment. "Well," he impatiently prodded, "do you know him or not?" "Well, I don't actually know him, but I do know that he's a clothing designer and that he has a clothing and sporting goods store in the mall," I offered. No, I don't care about that," my dad said with some frustration in his voice. "I just want to know what kind of guy he is, what kind of character he has. Why don't you go ask your mother? She might know." Now this is getting even more strange, I thought to myself. Mom was often heavily medicated due to her painful neuralgia, but miraculously, in that exact moment, she happened to be awake, up and about, and amazingly, and amazingly in a pretty clear mind. So I popped the question at her, which she didn't think to be strange at all. After reviewing her memory banks and sincerely trying to be helpful, my mother answered, I don't ever remember meeting him, but I don't know anything about his personality, but I've walked by his store plenty of times, never went inside though. Too expensive, she remarked, ending the conversation as she continued plucking her eyebrows with the limited vision that she had left. She had always preferred the sale dates at the big box stores rather than the designer labels. As my sister-in-law entered the house, she too was asked the question and perplexedly could offer no more information than her mother-in-law or me. I wonder why he needs to know about Eddie Bauer's character, I said to myself out loud. Surprisingly, my father blurted out, can't you see him? I need to know because he's here and he wants me to follow him. I initially thought Dad may have been a little confused and perhaps had been recalling a dream after sitting so long in silence. But silly me, my father knew precisely what he was talking about, and he went on to make it perfectly clear that he wasn't interested in following Eddie Bauer if he wasn't a good person. I just want to make sure he has good morals and believes in God, he continued. I don't want to follow a schmuck. Resigning to the fact that the situation was a serious one to him, I took off my judgmental hat and offered to look online for information. The web, however, only chronicled Bauer's career path and company information, but not anything about the man's personality or moral character. Feeling the need to tell my father something that would answer his question, I assured him that Eddie Bauer is a nature lover and rationalized that he must be a man who loves God. I don't know if he thought I was just appeasing him or if my research satisfied his curiosity, even if only a little bit, because he said nothing in response. The subject was dropped as suddenly as it had come up and was not mentioned again for the rest of the evening. However, it was not to be the end of it. When the sun came up in the morning, the ringing of the phone brought unexpected news. On the other end was my oldest son, Rashid, calling from North Carolina to let me know that he was at the airport and on his way to the Eddie Bauer corporate headquarters in Bellevue, Washington. He was employed as a distribution planner for another retailer, and due to his success in that position, he had received an invitation to interview for a position at Eddie Bauer Corp. Upon hearing the news, I was completely blown away by the coincidence as thoughts raced through my head about whether or not I should tell him what had happened the night before. After swift consideration, I opted to play the part cool and casual at first. But first, as a proud mom, I joined my firstborn in the excitement of this amazing opportunity that I felt that he well deserved. While you're there, I nonchalantly added, assuming that Eddie Bauer was alive and well, I hope you have an opportunity to actually meet the man and find out what kind of a guy he is. Before I could say more, my son interrupted me. Ma, in the first place, Eddie Bauer has been dead for 20 years. And what do you mean you were talking about the label just yesterday? That's random. Feeling I had no choice, I began my next sentence with, I know this might sound weird, but this is what happened.
Right there. Let's kick off the night with Team Blake's young pop singer, and
What happened?
I don't know what happened. Okay, I don't know what that was, but let's see. I began the next sentence with, I know this might sound weird, but this is what happened. I went on to explain everything and about how his grandpa had some concerns about Eddie Bauer without knowing more about him. When it was happening, I too thought the conversation that day was random, but looking back on it, especially after learning that Bauer was indeed in spirit, I have been able to see the bigger picture. At the time, I didn't know how the interchange between the spirit of Eddie Bauer and my father initially came about. But one thing I knew for sure is that the situation offered a dying man a choice when the ability to make choices were becoming more limited, while also giving him some control at a time in his life when he was losing control of just about all aspects of his existence. And this was indeed a gift. I also believe that my son's appointment for the interview was actually a God-orchestrated tool that created an energetic path to draw Eddie Bauer to my father for the purpose of helping him. In the end, Dad received what he needed. In my eyes, this proved that Bauer was a spirit of good character and morals. About 2 weeks later, out of curiosity, I asked my father if Eddie has still been visiting him. He responded, "No, he's not here anymore because I made the choice not to follow him, but he sure is a good guy." Incidentally, Rashid was offered the position at the corporate headquarters, but he turned it down. He decided he would rather live in California. That same week, he received another offer from another retail chain in San Francisco, and was able to use the offer from Bauer as a bargaining tool, which in the end helped him to land the San Francisco job at a higher salary. I have come to believe that every being, whether in the physical or spiritual form, has a mission with the same underlying purpose: love, compassion, and service to others. Throughout our existence, we are faced with challenges that help us to reshape our soul, which in turn allows us to evolve spiritually. The fact that we all begin our existence as energetic beings and continue to be so even while encased in our physical form allows the law of attraction to come into play and provides avenues for us to accomplish our personal missions as we are spiritually and energetically entwined with the people, the situations, and the disembodied spirits who can help us. So that's the Bauer story. It's and it doesn't end there even. Any comments?
Jack, your sound.
Jack, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Karin, I was saying that it was quite a synchronicity of your father encountering the Eddie Bauer spirit and your son applying at the other end of the other side of the country for a job at Eddie.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. We thought so too. I mean, that was the last thing that I would have expected, really.
Were there any other visitations after Eddie Bauer?
Oh yeah, there were lots of them.
Okay.
There were lots of them, and some of them are very, very involved and long.
Well, we have the time.
I'm not going to read the whole book though, but I will. I do have another one. This is a quick one, and this one I thought was pretty nice. Okay. Okay.
Karin, do you mind if I show a picture of your book?
Oh, I don't mind.
Please do.
Okay, you can still talk.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, let me just begin reading this. It was getting to the point where I couldn't wait to hear the mystical thing that would happen next in my father's world. I think that he too was amazed. I was feeling blessed that he was sharing his experiences with me. And as for my brother, he was beginning to get curious. Dr. Ann Danis, a hospice neurologist and palliative care physician, suggested that if, as caregivers, we should encounter someone experiencing visions at the end of life, we need to ask, Is there meaning to the vision? If there is meaning, does it need to be explored? Does it bring comfort or is it distressing? We have a responsibility to ask that next question. It can be cathartic, and patients often need to share. And if we don't ask, look what we may miss. Oh, Karin, do you see her? She's so beautiful. Who? I asked. The lady in the red dress, my father responded, still gasping at her beauty and teetering at the edge of glory. But then instantly he seemed to forget I was there. He called out to her, "Please take my breath away. Please take my breath away. Please, please." Of course, I would have liked more information, but I didn't get it this time as he slipped into what appeared to be a deep state of stillness, contemplation, reflection, and possibly introspection, waiting to exhale, even perhaps permanently. It would be hours before he opened his eyes. Whatever it was all about, he seemed to have come to terms with it, and for that I was pleased. So that was one that I knew about, but he didn't explain it to me.
Well, carry on. We still have time. Any others?
Okay, I'd have to find one here. I had those 3 things marked. I thought that would take up all the time, but apparently not. Let's see. Well, I'm sorry that I'm just being silent here. Does anybody have any questions so we could talk about while I find something?
Yes, Karen, I have one.
Yes.
Through the process of you writing the book, because it took you also quite a few years,
Yeah.
you had you were mentioning once that your father was frustrated because he couldn't grab. There was a door that he couldn't grab to.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I have to find that one. It's in here somewhere.
And I think Roman had a question, but I missed it. Bethany, do you know what Roman's question was?
So Roman was letting Jack know that his mic was muted.
Okay.
Oh.
But I do have a question for Karin.
Yes.
And because you use your healing energy to help others, I'm wondering if there's ever a time when it just doesn't work, or the spirit is saying, no, that's really not the right thing to do right now.
Well, everybody seems to want just physical healing, especially if they have a physical illness. Always, I believe that some type of healing takes place, whether it's emotional, spiritual, or physical. When my father was sick, he did agree to do the energy healing. And he was also doing chemo. And the cancer that he had, the pancreatic cancer, it was situated in a place that was inoperable, right between all the veins and arteries in there. And the chemo, he was told, would just give him a little bit more time to get his affairs in order. And it wouldn't shrink the tumor or physically heal him. So we started the energy healing, which I did in the beginning over the phone. This was before I moved down there to stay with him. And we did it every couple of days, I believe, every other day or something over the phone. And at the end of that, oh, I'm losing my words here. The chemo sessions, they found that the tumor decreased in size by 17. And we were pretty thrilled. And my mother said, oh, it's because of the healing, because they didn't expect it. We'll never know. But that is a case where, we think that there was some physical healing there. And then he did live long enough to do everything that he needed to do, to take care of all the business and everything. So he lived, I think, 18 months after he was diagnosed.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Are there any further questions you'd like to ask Karin? You can either do it with a caption or turn on your mic.
Karin, do you have your website for your book, or is it just sold on Amazon?
It's on Amazon, and there is a website, but let's see what it is. It's outskirtspress.com/dancing in the moonlight. And it's the same thing there that you see on Amazon.
Okay. So Christine had a question. Bethany, do you still have that question from Christine? Yeah.
Yes, Christine wanted to know, how did the Eddie Bauer vision affect your son or family?
That's a surprise at the end of the story.
That's a surprise.
That's
so we have to read the book.
Yeah. Yeah, because it didn't end. And this I just found out like 2 years ago. So, it's something that happened 2 years ago that was kind of very incredible. But as far as my father went, after this incident, he never mentioned Eddie Bauer again. We never mentioned Eddie Bauer again. But it seemed to me that Eddie Bauer came through. He had a job to do, and that was to give my father some choices when that's what he really needed to have. Because when you have so many losses at the end of life, and when you can't get around, and you don't even have sometimes the ability to make choices. So he gave him that.
Karin, this is Jack. Could you tell us what the origin is of the title of your book?
Yes. My father was very anxious, and I don't know if he always was, like before he started the chemo and after he started the chemo, and he just couldn't settle down. He would sit down and then he would stand up and he'd say, I just don't know what to do. I just don't know what's happening to me. And I put my arms around him and I said, well, let's just dance. So we would dance and then he would calm down. And not that there was music or anything, but we would go through the motions of dancing, and it became a habit to do whenever he felt too much anxiety, and it helped him to calm down.
That's beautiful.
Yes, that was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Or Karin, do you have anything that you want to share
You know, I wouldn't mind reading something else, but I just can't seem to find exactly the page.
Okay.
Because I didn't mark anything else.
Well, I think that Sue is gone. I wanted to ask her about the department on our website where the authors will have their book listed and for sale. Jim Bruton has just published his book.
Congratulations.
Is there, if there isn't anything else, shall we all wave our hands to thank Karin for her wonderful presentation? It was very, very wonderful, and you're a very beautiful writer, very, very clear and nicely presented. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bethany, for making this happen.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
So, this is
if you don't mind, Jack, I'm going to stop recording now.
okay.
Okay.
All right.
So, Jack, next month it's